got us off to a great start. And we're joined tonight, just I think a fascinating pair. Bernie Najar, who is the head of golf instruction at Caves and has been a long-term friend for us at MedStar Sports Medicine and hosting golfing events at Caves, and has been a wonderful friend of ours. And with one of his students, Kyle Berkshire, who actually grew up in Crofton, Maryland, playing the traditional game of golf and was a student of Bernie's at a very young age. And now Kyle is the long drive champion on planet Earth. So when you can do something better than anybody else on the entire planet, I think you have an audience that needs to listen to how you got there. So Bernie and Kyle are going to share some of their relationship and Bernie's teaching when Kyle was playing a traditional game of golf, and then Kyle's move into the long drive world, which has been very successful for him. And then what I think is fascinating, and we may all learn a lot from, is that Kyle is going to be heading back to playing tournament golf again at this point. And some of his insights about moving back to tournament golf and playing on the course, going to still be in the long drive world, but that would be interesting as well. Bernie will share some slides with us and then have conversation with Kyle. My co-host Justin Cooper and I may jump in every once in a while with a question, and we really look forward to this evening. So Kyle, thanks for being with us, and Bernie, I'll turn it over to you, okay?
Sounds great. Well, good evening, everyone, and Kyle, thanks for being here. And we've been talking about this event for the last few weeks and looking forward to sharing some stuff with everyone tonight on how Kyle's developed as a player and his long drive career and so many other topics that I think you'll enjoy tonight. And I think the best thing we can do for everyone, Kyle, is talk a little bit about our relationship. So when did we get together? About 2009?
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm amazed I've been able to put up with him for this long, and even more so he's been able to put up with me for that long. No, I went to see him back in 2009 when he was at Woodholm Country Club. I was just a run-of-the-mill junior golfer and wanted to get better at my game. And so we've been kind of doing that ever since, and going up through high school. I started my growth spurt a little later than a lot of juniors, and I was a longer hitter as a youngster, and then to see the kids that I would hit past grow, get stronger, and get distance on me and hit it past me was very tough. So he got a ground floor view of that process and the beginning, I guess, process and the genesis of where I got a lot of speed and kind of how that went, where I was forced, because my body wasn't growing at that time, I was forced to keep up by developing a more efficient swing, training for speed inadvertently. And then as we went through, later high school years, I started growing. I had that efficient swing built because of my desperate attempt to keep up with guys that are stronger than me. And as my body developed and grew, I had more strength. And on top of that, I had an efficient swing from that phase of my life. So by the time I left high school, we were 130 club speed, close to 130. And then I went to college to play collegiate golf at the University of North Texas. And my speed just kept exploding. I started working out in the gym, and I think my sophomore year, I came back to see Bernie and kind of asked him if I could do a long drive, and he said, "You could do it." He said you probably could, and so that's kind of the genesis of that. That was, say, December of 2016. Yes. Got on Gears Golf. My club speed was right around 140, low 140s. But keep in mind with Gears, it's that point of impact. So with TrackMan, you're looking at maybe mid 130s, and then from there just kind of slowly started building up my speed. And here we are today, 12 years later from when I first started working with him. And we're sitting mid 150s club speed. My highest club speed so far in my career has been 159.5 miles an hour with a 234 mile an hour ball speed. So it's been a pretty crazy progression. And the really cool thing is, you have this guy to my left, he's had a really good seat for all of it. And he's got a tremendous amount of perspective that is very rare for people who are top performers. I've actually seen that progression all the way from really never having any inkling of someone being a really, really long hitter to now being kind of on a different planet. So it's going to be really cool to hear his perspective, and I hope to add as much as I can to that as well.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Kyle. And for those of you watching and joining us, welcome. And I'm going to share my screen now with a little presentation I think you'll enjoy. So we're gonna take a look at some stuff here just to give you a snapshot of some of the stuff Kyle just mentioned. And it starts with, as we start our journey, you know, it's amazing to see where you've come, Kyle. I mean, obviously you've won the last 2 world championships and the national long drive during the COVID year. But, you know, just going back through things, just giving everyone an overview of your history here and helping them know a little bit more about long drive in terms of not just you personally, but the tour and where that's going, and how all of a sudden we've got PGA Tour players fascinated with long drive.
Yeah.
And Bryson DeChambeau, as everybody's seen, has really gotten into it, and he had quite a showing at the World Championship last year.
Yeah, it went from something that was kind of a fun little thing that he was going to do to it quickly became a very serious thing. What I mean by that is guys like me, Justin James, Josh Koch, other top guys in the sport, you know, we quickly realized this wasn't just a publicity stunt. And I always deep down knew he would do pretty well. I had him getting somewhere between the round of 32 and round of 16, definitely top half. But when I saw his first couple sets at the first day, I was like, this is actually, he's a legitimate threat. And it was pretty cool to see the run he made into the final 8. You know, got the last spot in the final 8 and really put on a heck of a show. And it's really cool because, you know, he wasn't the fastest guy. He was sitting between 215 to 220 ball speed. Then you had guys like me, Justin James, and other guys that were 225 plus, but he was hitting the center of the face every single time because obviously he would. He's a PGA Tour player, and he's hitting a ton of balls in the grid. And that was really cool because I think it helped dispel a lot of myths that long drive is all about speed. Long drive is all about ball striking and hitting the grid, and speed helps. So it was really cool to see him do what he did, bring all the attention to the sport that, to be honest, we desperately needed given the situation after kind of the virus. And yeah, and just so you guys know, he will be competing at the next tour event in the Pro Long Drivers schedule, which is in about 2.5, 3 weeks right after the Masters in Jupiter. And he will be most probably at Worlds. Can't say for sure, but good chance. And so it'll be a really fun year. And I think you guys will really enjoy watching him compete and all the other guys compete.
Yeah, so just moving along here, talking about World Long Drive, these are some stats that you've improved upon.
Yeah, we've you know, I'm still ranked world number 1. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to move up to 0th in the world. And you know, 229. This was made up, I think, midway through last year. So yeah, 229 ball speed was my highest last year. Now we're sitting at 234.4, which I was able to achieve roughly a month ago. And 235 should be right around the corner. And yeah, 6 events won. Now we're up to 11. I just won my 11th event on the season opener a couple weeks ago. So that'll be coming. That'll actually be coming out really soon on my YouTube channel. All those videos of that. So nice progression upwards. Always nice to see those counting stats continue to increase, and hopefully a 500-yard drive is right around the corner.
So just going back to your junior golf days, you remember this lesson? You know,
yeah.
This is back at Woodhome, and, you know, Kyle came out as a very artistic player. And I say that to those of you in the audience, because some of you might relate to this. He wasn't someone that we would teach positions to in the golf swing. We spent a lot of time doing shot making with different challenges, whether it was hitting low, medium, or high shots to hitting draws and fades. And that was probably the best vehicle we had to help you develop your game and into a tremendous ball striker in high school. I mean, for the most part, if you had the putter working, it'd be game over. But yeah. You developed incredible ball striking skills that I think for you gives you a huge advantage in your World Long Drive career, because you understand not only how to hit it far, but to hit different shots out there when the conditions change. And it's from a lot of the stuff you did as a kid. Oh yeah, I mean, things change so quickly out there. And, you know, I definitely credit a lot of what, you know, Bernie did working with me as a youngster. And, you know, my ball striking was, I think, really what got me as far as I got in the world of golf. You know, I know the biggest reason I was recruited by North Texas and other pretty high ranking Division I schools was because I had an ability to hit 15, 16 greens with regularity and regulation. And now that I'm in the long drive world, the biggest helper for me in terms of winning events, yes, speed helps. Yes, it's nice to be the guy with the most horsepower, but I'm able to hit the center of the face over and over. And that is something you guys can really take home from this.
I really want to drive this point home, is it's good to push speed, but don't push speed until your current swing speed is maxed out. What I mean by that is, are you hitting the center of the face over and over and over? Because let's say you swing 100 miles an hour and you can get up to 110, but getting up to 110 makes you hit it all over the face. You'd be better off staying at 100 miles an hour and getting really, really good at hitting the center of the face there. So that when you do push up to 110, you'll be able to hit it in the center of the face more regularly because you do have a more consistent swing built up. And then as you progress, the typical pattern is going to be at your new speed, learn how to hit the center of the face over and over. Once you've mastered that, then you're ready to start pushing speed again. It makes no sense to push speed, when all you're gonna be doing is just mishitting it and hitting it all over the place.
Yeah, that's great stuff there, Kyle. So, just going back to the childhood days, not that long ago, you loved hitting different shots. And for any of the juniors watching this, imagination, something that is ongoing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're always, one of the fun things we get to do is we shoot lots of content, whether it's for your YouTube channel or mine, or just making videos. And we've always found fun shots to hit. And this is one of the first ones you showed me, which was pretty much the conversation was, do you think I can get this out of this puddle onto the green? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, and I think I successfully did. I don't know if I got the green, but I got out. If you actually look, it's hard to see, but and like that really, really big splash that's kind of going ahead of all the other water behind it. The ball is in there.
Yeah.
And I still remember this actually hitting the shot. And I don't know, it's just, I feel like it's a really important part of the game to be able to have imagination, and kind of, it's an art form of the game. You need to be able to see a shot before you can hit it. And if you're capable of seeing a multitude of shots from one situation, whether it be a shot under a tree or a shot over a tree or around a tree, if you can see multiple shots, then you have multiple shots that are options for you to hit. Your body can do anything that your brain can conceive of much more easily. If your brain hasn't even conceived of it, it's very hard for the body to repeat it. That's why visualization, you see all these pros doing that, because seeing it in your mind is very important and really helps you repeat it in the physical world.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And then just a nice little swing progression for everyone to see. And when I say this, this is right around May of 2009. So actually, I think what we just saw was at a younger age where you were playing those shots. But in any event, you can see his golf swing started when he came out to see me with a fairly strong grip, which we left alone. And if you're someone with certain swing characteristics that match that grip, that's something you want to play with. So, golf's a game where you'll see lots of different positions of the hands, from whether you overlap or interlock. But typically when you see a strong grip, that allows someone like Kyle to use his lower body very aggressively through the ball. And that was a big power source for you as a kid, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And I mean, you can really see, like, what I really want you guys to look at is as we go through these slides here, the lower body involvement, how much more pronounced it is versus the top row and the bottom row, so just got to walk you guys through the timeline and the actual velocities involved here. So the top two frames, I believe, were 2010. I was about 13 here, maybe 12, 13, swinging right around 100 miles an hour. And then the middle frames, this was my senior year of high school. This was actually, I remember this because, junior year. I remember this because this exact video was actually a swing shown in my recruiting video. So that's how I know it was around that time frame. So this was 2014, swinging about 118, 120. And I was in the process of growing and quickly building speed. By the time my senior year was over, I was really close to 130. And then you look at the bottom photo, that is about a month before I won my first world championship in 2019 at the age of 22, swinging about 151 to 152 miles an hour. And to give you an extended timeline, fast forward to now, 2022, at the age of 25, my club speed is sitting right around 154 to 156, and I've gotten it as high as 159. So something I want to mention, there's been an unbroken line of speed progression for almost 15 years. And that's what I want people to see and take away from this, is that you can always continue to increase speed. There's certain ways and methods that we'll get into that are both safe and effective. And that's the key word here, is safe and effective. We don't want to do something that's going to get you hurt, and we don't want to do something that might be safe but won't give you results. So it's kind of combining those two things will be what we're trying to do for you guys today.
And just as you look at Kyle getting through the ball here at a young age, notice how much he's unloaded from the ground up. Notice his right foot's already in the finish position and the ball's just left. And many juniors do this. As you get older, it's a little tougher to move this way, but these are elements of long hitters, and it's pretty interesting to see. This is almost like his signature that he's cultivated as a junior golfer. And thankfully, we were able to just allow you to evolve with what you do with your body and complement it without giving you the cookie cutter approach with
Absolutely.
instruction. So that's been a big part of it. It's been a great journey for me as a coach to work with someone like Kyle. You'll see a lot of changes here in the upper body. That has a lot to do with going through puberty and developing the upper and mid core. You can see the difference there on his finish. So even though you hit this ball pretty nicely, you didn't quite have the strength to maintain the same spine motion through the ball. I mean, look at the difference here.
Yeah, big time.
And so those are things that if you're going through some growth as a junior golfer, it's normal. You're going to have some volatility, but typically your legs are going to be your strongest suit till you probably get around 14, 15, and then you'll start to be able to take advantage of your upper body more. So the power sources in your body that are really important to take care of are your legs. And wouldn't you say, Kyle, your mid core? Talk a little bit about that with your workouts.
Yeah, so one of the things I found really important, obviously legs are a huge driver of speed. In fact, I believe the biggest reason my speed has increased to the extent it has this past year, what I mean by is 2021. I started 2021 right around 153, 154, marginally faster than I was in 2019. By the time Worlds came around, I was 56, 57. And I was even just a couple weeks ago, I was swinging like 158, right around there. And it's because I actually started training legs really seriously for the first time. And that was a huge driver of speed. Another huge driver of speed is the back muscles, and in particular the lat muscles, which is basically the muscle inserts right in here. And when you kind of pull back from the lower back, it'll flare out. And those are really powerful because as you pull down, the lat muscle is what's doing the pulling. And so the speed generation with the legs works really in nice tandem with powerful lats. So if you can generate power from the ground up, and then as you're squatting down and firing from the top, those lats do a lot of that heavy lifting when it comes to creating upper body rotation. So you really want to focus on legs and lats. Those are the two I really recommend working on.
So when you start looking at power in the swing, and I'm pulling up here for everyone to see, this is in my software that I use with Swing Catalyst, where we measure ground forces. So you can see standing on the Swing Catalyst force plate here, and you can see on the right these graphs, and they're showing the horizontal force, the torque, and the vertical force. Now, the horizontal force, many of you will relate to that best as far as how much you're pushing right and left in your swing, or we'll just say that's the gliding force that drives the body back and forth from trail side to lead side. And that's a big part of the swing. It's like a pendulum where you're swinging the body in that fashion. The torque is how much you're twisting the ground, and the vertical force is how much you're pushing into the ground. And then of course the reaction forces push you the other way. So that's why you see Kyle and all the long hitters, for the most part, the lead side is off the ground when they hit the ball because they've used so much vertical force. So Kyle, this is a swing, I believe, that you took 2016. So if you just look at the magnitudes here, and then if we go after we started doing some long drive training, you can see those numbers started to increase. And then it's pretty cool to see where you were right before you won the world championship. Yeah. So these ground forces are really important, and being able to access those in the right way. So obviously you're timing them correctly is really important. And then obviously you need to have your body where it can do what you're seeing here, where you can create vertical force effectively in the swing and twist the ground. So these are things we've used, and they're very helpful in terms of helping you get to where you've been today, along with some other great coaching you've had. So we can certainly show you some more stuff, but I think what's really important for everyone to understand, whether you're an avid golfer looking to hit the ball longer, or someone who is just getting into the game, you know, there's certain things that are going to help you hit the ball we're going to say further than most people you play with if you understand a couple basics, right? So Kyle, what's the biggest power leak you see with amateur golfers?
Well, that's actually really easy. And other things, great things that's really easy to fix. It's more of an awareness thing than anything. So a lot of people, when they swing, I'll move back here so you guys can see my body a little better. A lot of amateurs, when they swing, they kind of go like this, and then they shift this way. What you want to do is instead focus really on turning, but it's shifting, not swaying. So what I mean by that is shifting is when you shift to your trail side and you kind of have this part of the body coiled up. Swaying is where you let that kind of slide out. And a lot of people do that thinking that they just come off the side like that, then they'll come through with more speed. You don't. You want to really focus on a turn back and behind the ball instead of a sway off the ball. So that's what I want you to focus on, because when people hear the phrase come off the ball in your backswing, it is a good piece of advice. The problem is it's very open to misinterpretation because it's a little oversimplified. So yes, you want to come off the ball, but don't come off of it this way. So don't come off of it, you know, horizontally. Come off of it, turning behind it, and a little bit horizontally, but more, you're thinking about turning more behind and really trying to plan everything in your trail glute. And that is where all this power starts. When you come through, you can really push off of, you know, this trail area. But I really want you guys to focus on is when you're coming through, these two parts of my body right here, they're going to come really close together. And then as I push off, they're going to separate. You see this in baseball, pretty much any kind of sport where you're generating speed from the ground up. These two parts of your body here, the trail thigh and the trail hip, are going to get really close together. You can see I can get my thumb actually reach in there, and then when I explode, my thumb can't touch that finger anymore. So you want to really think about stacking and loading behind you on that trail glute. And then a good way to practice this is once you have done that, put your finger in the middle of your quad and put a finger right over your hip bone and really try to feel that those fingers coming apart by expanding that trail hip. And that's a really good way to kind of remind yourself how you want to generate that, because a lot of people try to do this, but they kind of get lost in the translation of coming off the ball and they just end up swaying off the ball instead of shifting.
Yeah, that's a great tip for everyone. And what I would also say to everyone here is don't be afraid to hit the ball at practice without the governor on, meaning go ahead and hit some tee shots where you don't worry about micromanaging the dispersion. You know, feel like you got the whole range to hit into. And you don't want to do it every shot, but definitely at least 5 to 10 shots at the end of your practice session. Have some fun and try to hit the ball out of the range.
Yeah. And I mean, expanding off of that, this is a kind of a concept that I've talked to Bryson about this a lot. Bryson first reached out to me right after I won the World Championship in 2019, and he was really curious about this. And so I'll tell you guys kind of exactly what I explained to him. The biggest reason speed training is so important is because our bodies, when we swing, the closer we are to our max potential speed-wise for our given situation, it's harder to hit the center of the face. And so let me give you guys an example. Let's say your maximum speed is 100 miles an hour. Well, then if you swing 95, you're probably not going to hit a ton of balls in the center of the face at 95. You might have to drop down to 90 to hit balls in the center of the face. However, if you push your speed above 100, so let's say you go to a range, you know, over a couple months, you train for speed and your max speed goes from 100 to 105. Well, guess what? Now you're going to strike it much better when you swing 95. And you're also going to be able to control 100 pretty good, which used to be an all-out swing for you. I actually observed this phenomenon myself. I remember back when I started long drive, my top speed was like 138, 140. And yes, I hit it in the center of the face a fair amount, but I would have to sometimes drop down to 136, 137 to have full control over my trajectory and ball flight. Now I can push my speed up to like 154, 155 and keep complete control over my entire swing. And it's only now when I get up to like 57, 56, 58, where I have to start sacrificing those little things. All this to say, a lot of people will see you swinging out of your shoes on the range, and they'll ask a very, very simple question. How is that going to help you in golf? Because you're not hitting the center of the face, you're hitting all over the place and all that stuff. How can that help? Well, if your max speed is higher, you're going to also have a higher controlled play speed. That is why it's so critical. So to be able to swing at a certain speed and with great control, you need to be able to swing at an even greater speed out of control. And so when you push up your maximum club speed, you're pushing up your usable club speed on the golf course where you're hitting the center of the face, you're controlling the direction of the ball, and you're controlling the flight. And that's why speed training is really critical at this kind of level.
Yeah, that is great information there. And when we talk about cruising speed, Kyle, versus maximum speed, you're pretty much telling everyone once you push through your barriers. So if your tendency is only to be able to get to a certain speed, whether it's 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, whatever it is, if you push through that just for a couple swings at the end of practice, go a little faster than you're used to, then all of a sudden you can improve your cruising speed. I can tell you from my experience, I've been able to gain 20 miles an hour in the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy, honestly.
And a lot of it is, look, hanging out with Kyle, you get faster. I will tell everyone, you have to get faster. Otherwise,
Is that why
he's
you're always
not-
hanging out with me now?
Yeah, that's why I really like you. But the truth is, the grief I would get from you if I didn't,
Yeah.
because you're sitting here saying, oh, I'm going to outdrive you with a 4-iron today. So you have to up your game when you're around longer hitters. But, it's fun to practice and work on your game. And a lot of times it's easy to go to the range and all you're doing is hitting 7-irons. So be sure to use your driver a little bit more in practice. And again, push yourself past your limits. It doesn't need to be every practice session, but 2 sessions a week would make a huge difference. And the other thing is pay attention to your intensity. Let's talk about intensity.
Yeah.
What's it like to be on the long drive tee? Where's your heart rate?
Well, I actually have a Fitbit for this very reason. And the highest I've ever had it recorded, I actually broke my record a couple weeks ago when I went 234 ball speed. So in 2019, at the Tennessee Big Shots tour event on Golf Channel, I went 228 ball speed for the first time and it was my last ball and I won the 7th. My heart rate when I checked it was 207. And a few weeks ago when I went 234 ball speed, heart rate was 211. So, and that's just where your body has to be. If you're going to achieve maximum limits physically, you have to be pushing your body to its limit. And I would recommend, it would be a very good idea. You guys can go speed train, wear a heart rate monitor, wear something that monitors your heart rate. Try to keep your heart rate between 130 to 160. That's a pretty good spot to be. That's a really good place where you're pushing your cardiovascular system, you're pushing your body's physiological state, and you should see speed increases over time. And something else I want to bring up, just from kind of a biomechanical point of view, because I think a lot of people need an analogy just to really understand exactly how this stuff works. Because it is kind of heavy stuff that it's still pretty cutting edge, and we're still learning more about it ourselves. But we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. And what you're doing when you swing at a certain effort level, 100 miles an hour, and then after 6 months of training, you make the same swing with the same effort, and you're swinging 110 miles an hour. And let's assume you didn't do any bodybuilding and you didn't like increase your strength in gym, but you're still doing that club speed 10 miles an hour faster, no change in effort, no change in swing. What happened? Well, it's the same thing that happens when a power lifter is able to bench, say, 315 pounds on the bench press and trains to mechanically be better at bench press. And 10 months later, at the same effort level, they're able to bench 335 or 345. You've simply trained your central nervous system to recruit more of its muscle fibers and fire more efficiently. So that's what we're doing. That's what speed training does. It trains your brain and trains your muscles to recruit a higher percentage of their muscle fibers. Because the way the body works when it comes to physical maneuvers is over time, we get better at recruiting those neurons to fire efficiently. That's why it's called muscle memory. It's technically memory from the brain sent to the muscles, but muscle memory is a good catch-all term that describes what's happening pretty simplistically. And that's what speed training is doing. It's putting, brains in your muscle, especially the muscles that create speed, and they get more efficient, they get better at firing. And in a nutshell, that's what's happening. And the beauty of it is if you train in the gym, you get stronger and you do all those things, you're just pouring gasoline on that fire and you're going to see insane results. And that's why I went from swinging about 125 to 127 when I entered college. And by the time I came back from sophomore year, about 20 months later, I was swinging about 138. And because I started lifting weights and I was still speed training without really realizing what I was doing. And, we kept going. And in the last 5 years, we've gone from 138 club speed to 158, so this really has no limits. Obviously there is an upper limit, but, I know I'm still not at mine. And, I hope that serves as inspiration for you guys that there's a lot of speed to be gained and it can be gained safely and effectively. And the best part is it's speed you can use in a golf course. And I think that's what you guys are really after. So.
Yeah, those are some great points. And that's something that's so critical. I mean, I can tell everyone from my experience, gaining speed helps your iron game. I mean, it's not just for your driver. Your long irons are going to go higher. Many golfers can't hit a long iron because they don't have enough speed. So with today's equipment, if you're trying to hit a 5-iron and you're not swinging at least 86 miles an hour, it's not going to fly very well. And that's because the loft on the clubs are stronger, the spin rate on the golf ball is lower. So that's an important thing to understand. Now, for those of you who aren't going to achieve 100 miles an hour, let's just say you're in the 70 mile an hour category, or you might be battling some injuries that won't let you go too much faster than where you are. There are always ways to get more efficient. And when I say that, it's sometimes equipment fitting. Sometimes it's seeing a swing coach that can help you understand the little nuances that you can tweak to make things work for your body better. I mean, Kyle's pretty much a Ferrari. So when I work with,
dressed up in red.
that's right. When you work with someone who's ready to go fast and has the ability to go fast, it's a lot different. But there are plenty of clients I have that don't have the physicality that he has, that have picked up distance. And sometimes what we have to do is it's a little grip change, or it might be something in your setup. We might have to widen your stance or narrow your stance. Sometimes we might have to make an adjustment to your feet in terms of how they're oriented at address. You might have to turn one out a bit more to make that turn easier. So there are lots of things you can do a lot of times before you swing that'll help that. But the most critical thing you need to know in all of this, and which is why we're here with MedStar, is we got to talk about the body and make sure the body that you have is ready to go fast or simply play golf better, because sometimes there's physical restrictions that make it tough to do what we're talking about. I'll share with everyone, I'm 50 years old. About around my 40th birthday, I had a situation where I got hit by a player in a golf lesson. They hit me in the right shin, and I had a lot of issues in my right foot. And I immediately started losing my ability to load in the backswing as a right-handed golfer. I didn't really understand a lot of things I'm sharing with you and what Colin and I have been talking about, but I lost my ability to push into the ground from that injury. And until I did the rehab and got to the right program to work on my body, my distance just went straight downhill. And it wasn't from lack of knowledge or technique, other than my body couldn't go where I needed to go. So sometimes you really got to do some stuff outside of golf to help you with your golf. So it's really important that you have that connection. And I know the folks at MedStar can help you with that. But the other piece of this is you need to know, as your body changes, how it can move better, or this is your range of motion. And within that, that's how you would want to design and really figure out your best swing. And, you know, there are lots of different things you can do to help with that. One of the main things that I try to see on people is, where is your dominant power source? If I have a junior golfer in front of me, especially one that's under 15 years old, I know it's their legs. And I know typically they're weak in this section. So it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're going to do a lot of upper body lifting, but we need to do some things to help their swings work from the ground up. And then we might get some folks that they're not very mobile in their lower body anymore. They might be on their way to a hip replacement, or they have limited range of motion due to other injuries. So we got to figure out how things are going to work up here. Or maybe it's just getting their arm swing a little better. But in all those areas, you can always find opportunities. The main thing is, when you go to hit balls, when you're hitting for distance, pay attention to your practice session and think of it like you're going to do a little sprint at a given point in the session. Don't jog the whole session, because if you go the same speed the whole session, unfortunately, you're just going to be the same speed. So you really got to, Kyle, push it, right?
You need to overload your system. The only way our bodies adapt, because in the end of the day, it really does help to understand, when you understand that our bodies are, you know, mechanisms for survival and also homeostatic by nature. So you're not going to be able to influence a change in the body unless there is a very, very unique and extreme stimulus applied to it. That is the only way our bodies will supersede that homeostatic nature and change, is when they have perceived that whatever it is that you are doing is necessary for survival. What I mean by that is just been doing it a lot. And that's why, as Bernie said, swinging at maybe say 80% and just kind of Cadillacing your way through the session, it's just not going to do anything, because our bodies, as I said, are homeostatic. They don't want to change. And why would they change if we're hitting within our abilities? However, when you start pushing above and beyond your comfort levels, and that's why that heart rate's a really good proxy, 130 to 160, even higher if you can push it. I wouldn't recommend getting much above 180, 190. I did go over 200. 211 is my red line, but keep in mind, I was going 234, and it's something I will only do a couple of times a year, because it is definitely not necessarily the safest thing. But anything under 180, 190, you're completely safe. And you need to be in that range of 130, 160 plus to really force your body's central nervous system to start making changes to create more speed. Because again, we're always fighting, whether it be muscle building, healing and injury, things like that, or speed creation of anything. We're fighting a homeostatic environment. So a stimuli has to be applied that forces the body to change. And so intensity, when you're doing speed pushing in your sessions, is that stimulus.
So Kyle, this is Dr. Henton. Question for both you and Bernie. A lot of the folks on the line tonight work in sports medicine and work in athletic training, physical therapy, strength and conditioning. And I think we can sort of get a sense of you taking to an extreme this human body, which is basically a spring that loads and absorbs energy and then effectively releases that energy. And you're able to store a tremendous amount of energy and then release it. But the thing I'm most fascinated about is the ability to do that and to hit the ball in the center of the club. So from your standpoint, I've read an article that you were interviewed in, and said that at one point in your career, you were not maybe addicted, but hooked on the TrackMan and the numbers and the information it was giving you. So how far off the center of the club are we talking about for you? Is it a millimeter? Is it 2 millimeters? I'm fascinated about your ability at that speed to reproducibly hit the ball in the center of the club. So if you're 2 to 3 millimeters off at the same velocity, how does that decrease your distance, energy delivered to the ball?
That's a great question. And so, if we're looking at the club head here, obviously this would be the center. A few millimeters off would be going from the center to right about here. You're looking at probably, it depends on where you hit it. So if you hit it high in the toe, you're not going to lose a lot of speed. I mean, you're not going to lose a lot of distance. You're going to lose about 3 to 5 miles an hour ball speed at 150 club speed, but it's going to launch higher. It's going to spin a little bit less, and you're actually going to have you'll be very close to where you would if you hit the center of the face. That is why a lot of the top long drive guys, including myself, we always want to have a strike pattern. You will see this with almost every single top guy, where if this is the center right here, their strike pattern is going to be just a little bit towards the toe. That's going to be their miss pattern, because the death knell of a long driver is low and heel. Low means a low launch, heel means high spin. Low launch, high spin makes the ball go nowhere. So if I was to hit it, let's say 3 millimeters low and on the heel, probably losing 10% of my distance, maybe more. If I was to hit it 3 millimeters high on the toe, maybe 0.5% of loss of distance. If you want to say a square strike just a little bit low, probably 2 to 5%, and a square strike a bit high, you're probably looking at about 1 to 1.5%. And that's why, like, I wish we had it. We actually have it on my phone, but because when you hit a lot of shots in TrackMan, you can get what's called a heat map. And I hit about 75 balls at 151 club speed on average, kind of just, it's about a month and a half ago, just kind of with control. My heat map was actually pretty much a perfect circle with a slight bulge on the top right part of the toe. And the average miss was 1 millimeter to the right and 2 millimeters high, which is classic of a toe strike, a slight bias towards a toe strike. But if you miss by a couple millimeters, you're only going to lose about, as I said, maybe 1 to 2% if you keep it on towards the toe. But where you start losing a lot of distance is if you miss hit it a little bit on the heel. So what I would tell you and anybody else, if they want to maximize distance, because obviously we can't hit the center of the face every time, no matter who we are, try to develop a swing where the bias puts you a little bit towards the toe. And the best way I can say that is an in to out swing. So if you're looking at a swing path, this would be, that would be a slice, and this would be a hook. So, but this is an out, this would be out to in. So if you have a swing path in to out, it's kind of going to bias it a little more towards the toe, and that'll create a bit of a draw. And that's why people who draw the ball tend to hit it a little bit further. You do have people who fade it that hit it far, but they're very, very small fades. And they've typically learned to really optimize their strikes. So for anybody out there listening, I highly recommend an in to out swing path and that will naturally cause you to start favoring the toe on your strikes a little bit. So that way, even on your miss hits, you're retaining 99% of the distance you would have had on a perfect strike.
That's great.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay. Hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about breaking club heads and your swing speeds and club head speeds. Not something that many of us do, so I'd love to hear some of the stories you have on that.
Yeah. So
I've broken a few clubs, but it was not exactly from my swing speed.
Yeah. So what I would share with everyone, and Kyle, we could talk about breaking clubs ad nauseum, right? I mean, you've been trying to take me out since your junior golf days.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet, unfortunately.
But Kyle's got, initially when you started long drive, one of the hardest things once you go fast enough is learning how to slow the club down because it's going so fast to stop it on the finish. What was happening?
Oh, the shaft would snap in half. And, that's what one of the toughest things about the sport is developing a deceleration pattern as well as an acceleration pattern. And that's why a lot of rookies in the sport of long drive and also guys who are pushing speed who are new to it will break a lot of shafts because the deceleration pattern and the follow through always develops after the acceleration pattern. But eventually within a year or two, fret not, you will reach a place where you're not snapping as many shafts. I went through my rookie year, roughly 50 to 70 shafts. And then my second year in the sport in 2018, probably about 20. 2019, I think it was like 3 or 4. And in 2020, 2021, and 2022, I've snapped a total of maybe 2. It just takes time for the deceleration pattern to kind of develop. So you will experience likely some shafts breaking on your back. But as you continue to train, your body will eventually adapt and you'll get a really beautiful little kind of looking swing where there's just this tremendous speed at the bottom and it looks effortless and the club barely touches your back on the follow through. People are asking, and the typical trademark of this, it just looks like the ball explodes off the face, even though the club doesn't look like it's moving that fast. And that's how you know you've developed that swing. And I like to call this effect pop, meaning like, how a baseball player has pop through the ball. And that's what pop in a golf swing is the ability to create a lot of speed in a very compressed time frame in such a way where in the follow through, the club just maybe barely touches your back. And it just has this effect of the ball just looks like it's coming off a trampoline. And it's a very long standing, very sustainable type of swing. And I would say that's kind of the ultimate nirvana for someone pursuing speed, is to reach that place where they've really pushed their central nervous system to its limit, where they're firing as fast as possible. But at the same time, it's a very sustainable swing where the body is very well weathered to withstand it. And obviously the clubs can withstand it too, because you have, a shaft that won't break every time you swing. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. And it takes 3 to 5 years to reach this point, but it's definitely worth it once you get there.
Oh,
Yeah, I would
another question, looking at your videos online, like I also saw somewhere that you hit an 8-iron as far as the average PGA Tour driving distance. When you are hitting for distance, it looks like when you have your mid irons, you have somewhat of a conventional swing, although much more range of motion. When you're really hitting for distance with your driver and your long driver, there's a different pattern you use to load and unload. Tell us a little bit about hitting an 8-iron as far as you can versus hitting a driver as far as you can.
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is the length difference is a very substantial reason why the swing looks so different, because when you have a shorter club, the swing plane is always going to be a little more vertical, which kind of changes the power gauges. And given the swing being a little shorter, you have less time to load the club because the club isn't as long. So I have to be a little more conventional because my long drive swing requires me having more time to fully load the club because it's a lot more of a drawn out process. So generating the most speed with an 8-iron, to be honest, I rarely do it because, obviously it's not something that is necessarily helpful for golf or even long drive. But when I do it, I just kind of do my best to keep my swing compressed, and a conventional swing is definitely the best way to do it. I just try to really, really load at the top and create as much of torque from my body, and then I'll just follow through. And the biggest reason, as I said, the club's shorter, it's heavier, the swing weight's very different. So I don't have my time to do that rocking motion and also just set my body the way I would when I have a longer club with a longer arc. And it's out of necessity. With my long drive club, if I swung that way, I wouldn't be near the same speed because that longer arc, my body would start swinging down before the club properly loads because it takes a lot longer to load a longer shaft. And so transition into the driver in the 48-inch club, it's completely different because, as I said, this is a very, very long club. And as it takes a much longer time to load the club. In fact, this is something that I always find really good players like Bryson, they always struggle with this. I struggle with this too, because as golfers, we're used to loading the club real quickly and then unloading it. We're not used to this drawn out process of really letting the club set, being patient, and then slinging it from the top. And so it's really just comes down to the length of the club and swing weight. Those two things play a huge role in that. And then obviously the mentality, you're creating, it's just a different speed too. Like 120 club speed with an 8-iron is fast, but 155 club speed with a long drive club is just a different world. And it demands a more unconventional swing because, quite frankly, a conventional swing just doesn't have the levers and the fulcrum of those levers. It just doesn't have the necessary components to create that kind of speed. You really have to go a little more conventional. And that's kind of why you see the difference between what I'm doing with my driver at full speed versus what I'm doing with my 8-iron at full speed.
So tell us a little bit more about you mentioned being able to club. Bernie, anything you kind of cued him in on early on to train as he was a youngster? And then what about now, Kyle, a little bit about your training routine?
If you could, Justin, could you repeat that? Because you were
Sure. Maybe talk for a minute about training. And was there anything, Bernie, that you encouraged him on when he was a youngster? And then how about now, as he's gotten older, Kyle, a little bit about your training routine. And we're going to show some video at the end for golfers who don't have any exercises in mind and what they can do.
So you're asking about exercises, or are you just talking about golf specific training?
I would say, from your perspective, Bernie, some of the things you gave him that really helped the most. And then Kyle, the exercises you found have helped you more recently increase power.
All right. So I would say Kyle, as a junior, probably the most important thing we would do is hit different shots, and certain shots on the golf course or at the practice area are going to motivate you to generate speed and become a better ball striker. And, the one thing Kyle does so well that his competition is going to struggle to beat him at is hitting the center of the face. And he developed that skill, not just hitting driver, but hitting short game shots, hitting different trajectories and using long irons very well at a high level. And that, I think, gives you a huge advantage against your competition. So one of the things I would say, any junior out there or any of the adults that are looking to become a more proficient ball striker, I love the idea of getting out there with a long iron, put it on a low tee, and practice hitting some shots with the long iron. Get precise with that 2-3 iron if you can find one. An interesting story I got from Tom Watson is that we were doing a clinic together one time for a corporate event, and he told everybody, "You're not going to believe what club I warm up with." And he went around the crowd and asked everybody, and he said, "Nope, you're all wrong. I warm up with a 2-iron." And he said, "When I can hit my 2-iron well, I'm going to hit everything else in the bag well." And, it comes to most people as something, they never thought of. But if you think of the best golfers in the game, they're great long iron players. Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Tiger Woods. I mean, there isn't anyone that's been at the top of the mountain that isn't a good long iron player. But what I'd say to everyone, a great long iron player does something very similar to a power hitter. They pick the ball clean off the deck. They're not banging into the ground with a steep angle. They figured out how to catch it clean. I mean, Kyle's one of the best long iron players you'll see even before you did long drive.
Mhm.
And it's because you developed that skill. And, you know, one of the things Jack Nicklaus did as a kid is he was encouraged by his coach, and I try to do this with you, where we'd say, okay, let's hit the ball up in the air over that target. Let's hit it as high as you can. Because trying to hit higher ball flights teaches you a lot of skills, like number one, a shot that very few people have is a high long iron. But number two, you're not going to get ahead of the ball hitting a high long iron. You have to stay behind the ball. So there's some different tactics, but real quick, anybody could do this with their club. I'm just going to take the driver here and put my hand on top of it. So that's my left arm. And I'm going to put my right hand out in front of me. And this is a great motion here just to learn to stay behind the ball and get into the impact zone nicely. And when you do this, you'll get a lot of the same look and feel that you see with someone like Kyle or the best players in the game. So pick shots that encourage the shot or the swing you're trying to make. You know, for a lot of golfers, staying behind the ball would be a pretty good tip, wouldn't you say, Kyle?
Absolutely, because you know when you have like take this driver real quick. I like to think of there's a line you make at impact with the shaft of the club, and a great way to visualize this is anything that is past this line, meaning this way when you hit the shot, is lost power. So here's a good way of like exhibiting this. So if you're like this, well, then you lost pretty much everything from your shoulder and your lead lat. So you want to be kind of like obviously not exactly like a home run hitter, but it's the same idea where when you are at impact, there's a complete straight line form that goes up the shaft of the driver, through the forearm of the lead hand, up through the shoulder, meaning that there's absolutely nothing really beyond that shaft at impact, meaning that everything is behind the ball, everything is driving this club head through the ball instead of being like this. And a lot of people will get into that habit where if they're trying to swing fast, they try to do this. And they think, oh, if I can do this and throw my body, it'll create speed. And all you're doing is losing a lot of speed because there's so much body that's past the shaft of impact. So you really want to think about staying behind it, forming that line with the shaft and the forearm of the lead hand, and just having that be a really, really stout line that's ahead of the body at impact.
Yeah, and one other point on this, Kyle, just imagine you have a golf club. You know, just maybe having someone hold a club outside your ear and take some swings.
Because what this will do, it'll keep you from doing this. It'll keep you turning and going this way. If your head is behind the ball or at impact, it's almost impossible. I really don't know how I can even demonstrate keeping my shoulder like that. That'd be pretty funny. But if your head is staying behind the ball, it's almost possible for the rest of the body, to any part of the body, to get ahead of it. So that's a very easy way to train that. And, you know, that's a great way to ingrain that feel, and it'll create a lot more power because you're really posting up on the golf ball.
So question again, Dr. Hunt, question for both of you all. So at the top of this game in long driving, are the mechanics very similar between the top 10 people, and who is winning is based on physical characteristics and hitting the center of the club and being able to generate a little more speed? Or are there nuances about people doing the mechanics of the swing more effectively or differently or experimentally? Or you're all doing it the same way, you're just doing it better?
I would say it's another really good question. So the first thing you see in long drive, two things are pretty much universal. The lead foot almost always comes off the ground in the best guys. That's not because it's like a cool thing to do or it looks nice. It's because when you come off the ground and you turn, this lead foot literally has to come off the ground. It gives you a lot more turning and you can really create a lot more power. And the other thing you'll notice is that when you get to the top of the swing, make sure I don't take out his roof here, but you'll see obviously the conventional swing is, you know, I'll just kind of squat down. The conventional swing is kind of right here. And most long drive guys are going to be back here. And there are even guys, I can't do it, who are literally like this, like past perpendicular. Those are two really good kind of signs of a long driver, and also good clues for creating speed in general. Now, I don't go very far back past parallel because I've created a lot of acceleration just because I'm so efficient with my post-up move that we talked about a few minutes ago. I still do go back past parallel. I'm just not as crazy as some of the other guys. But those are two very common characteristics that you see pretty much universally. Beyond that, you're going to see a few things like I would call triggers. So like, for example, for myself, you know, I have a situation where I will do this, shift, and then I'll shift back onto my trail side. Justin James, when he's really going at it, you'll see him actually start to look this way, and then he'll kind of squat down and then really come off the ground. So you'll see triggers, and I think triggers are important because they allow someone to begin the kinetic chain of creating speed at a very consistent starting point. And honestly, Bryson DeChambeau is the same thing. He'll go like this. You'll see him he'll kind of do like a little happy feet dance and then come off of it. And he does this even on the PGA Tour. And so a trigger is something else you'll see. That's what we call as a trigger. It's a very consistent, subtle motion that gets the swing started, tells the brain, all right, it's go time. And I believe it shows up so much in long drive because it's such an extreme swing that we actually need our brain to switch into a different mode to properly execute it. And I believe you're actually seeing that a lot with guys on tour now that are faster swingers, namely Bryson. And Phil actually does a little bit. He'll do a little toe tap with his drive right before he swings. But all these guys that are pushing speed, it's very cool to see how they almost always end up having some kind of trigger that's plugged in. Now, above and beyond that, physique-wise, there's a very clear archetype for a great long driver, and that is big, muscular, and strong. And without putting too fine of a point on it, I'm actually one of the smaller guys in the sport. The average height of the typical long drive guys, are really top guy, it's probably 6'3". I'm about 6'2". Average weight, I would say the average weight of the final 16 at last year's World Championship was about 260. I was about 205 when I won it. So yes, weight helps, size helps, but I'm also proof that you don't have to be massive to create a lot of speed. If you just do these things we've outlined, where you have a speed training program that Bernie outlined, and you push the central nervous system to its limits, and you get strong in the gym and really focus on packing on muscle and kind of being in it for the long haul, and just slowly progress up, you'll find that while size helps, and I definitely recommend gaining muscle, getting to the gym, really learning about that kind of bodybuilding lifestyle, that will definitely help. But at the end of the day, it's about training your body to swing fast, and being big and bulky and muscular is just a small part of it. You can do a lot of the speed training without ever stepping foot in the gym. I'm just saying, highly recommend you do step foot in the gym. It'll optimize your results. Beyond that, beyond body size and those couple characteristics, everything else is pretty variable. You will see the typical top long drive guy, someone who has a lot of speed, has the ability to hit the center of the face and hits it pretty straight, and is mentally pretty tough. And oftentimes you will see two types of guys. I call them the brawlers and the swingers. The brawlers are the freaks, the physical freaks, the huge guys that come from a different background sport-wise and have learned to swing a golf club well enough that they can compete. These are typically the fast guys in the sport. And then the swingers, the guys who started as golfers and just had enough speed to be able to stay with guys that were faster, the brawlers. But because even though they're faster guys, they have the ability to hit the center of the face, the swingers of the golf club. And even if they're 10 miles an hour slower club speed, they're able to make that ball stretch and catch a lot of these guys, even if they're faster, and they hit more balls in the grid. More balls in the grid means you have a higher chance of getting a rollout. The reason I believe I've had the success I've had is very rarely in the sport of long drive will you have a person with a golf background also be the fastest guy in the sport. And that's kind of, I feel like, where I am right now, where for whatever reason, I guess we outlined them why it happened, but I came from a golf background, and as I gained speed, I quickly became one of the fastest swingers, and I was widely accepted by 2019. I was the fastest, and that is why I have the success I have, is because I have the golf background. So I know I hit the ball, shape it, hit the center face, and I have the firepower where even if someone who's that physical freak catches one, I still have the firepower to get past them. And oftentimes in a 6-ball set, very likely that I'll hit at least one decent shot. And when you have the speed I do, and it's a decent ball, oftentimes that's good enough to win. And, but that's kind of this landscape of the sport, and it's beyond that, there's a lot of different variables that make up a great hitter, but those are all the ones that are kind of universal with patterns that I've observed.
That's great. And we're going to wrap up, but we're going to show a few videos for those of you that don't have any exercise routine. We're also going to email those out. But I thought, Kyle, you might want to end by telling us about the future. What are you thinking about for the future?
Yeah. What was it?
What are you for the future? What are your plans?
So, my plans. Okay. So I would say at the moment right now, my biggest thing is continuing to progress in the sport of long drive. And I played in a few tournaments recently the last couple months and was very encouraged by my results. The biggest hurdle I have to overcome is just the mental bandwidth of staying in the top of the sport I'm in currently. And as I'm sure a lot of people watching know, tournament golf is a very stressful thing. So when you show up to a tournament mentally exhausted from training and long drive, or, I have to keep up my social media and all that stuff, and you show up already mentally exhausted and you're playing against guys who've done nothing but pro golf and they're completely refreshed and ready to go. That really, I found, is the biggest hurdle for me, is just being able to have the mental energy to focus and grind it out. And I feel pretty confident that that's something that I'm getting better at as things go on. A caddy would definitely be huge, and I'm in the process of getting one, so that some of that bandwidth can be taken away from me. And then, but in the immediate future, I have my next tour event in Jupiter, Florida in a couple of weeks. And then from there, it's building out my social media, continuing to do that, continuing to compete. I do want to compete in a PGA Tour event at some point in the near future. I just want to make sure that I'm ready to do so. It's just very hard because you're balancing. So as I said, you're balancing all these things that maybe other people don't necessarily have on their plate. But at the same time, you have this distance. So you really have to try to take the good with the bad there. And, we've been consistently working. And, if it happens, I'm happy with it. But to be honest, I'm also completely happy with never making it out there, because I'm doing what I love, educating people, entertaining people, and using my skills to contribute to the golf world. And I think that's really what it's all about. That's what the guys in the PGA Tour do. And, it's great to be able to do that my own way. And, if one day I happen to be on the leaderboard in the PGA Tour, that's great. If not, I'm, more than content to just keep hitting bombs and winning world titles. So we'll see what the future holds. It'll definitely be a fun little journey though. And we'll see how far it takes us.
Well, I think you certainly be congratulated. Again, not many people reach the pinnacle in a sport that you're at, and then to be willing to take a step back and put yourself in a position where you have to learn and work and do something different in tournament golf. I mean, hell, it'd been a lot easier for most people to just say, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Following you.
I appreciate it. Hopefully I'll give you guys something fun to watch.